Good morning, everyone, and thank you again for having me here. I'm going to speak in English. I apologize so that I don't embarrass myself fully out of the forum, so please forgive me with that. As Mark mentioned, we brought everyone together last night. We took a few people to really develop what we're trying to do here. I work for an organization called Matchboxology. I may have mentioned I'm based in Tanzania. My firm is based in South Africa, but we do work all over the world. And what we do is work as human-centered design practitioners. So you may ask yourself, what does that mean? Which is a very fair question. What we do is look at problems and start to understand from the human perspective what some of the possible solutions can be. What we've been tasked with is looking at some of the key problems and the key drivers to impact around global health, primarily around NCDs over the next 5 to 10 years. In order to do that, we all know what the problems are, right? We know what the main issues are. We're around thought leaders, experts in the field, researchers that are telling us what all the drivers are. But we need to look at the human element. So when we brought everyone together last night, we made them do something kind of silly. We made them say what they're most passionate about. Not around disease burden, not around what we do professionally, but what you do in your own time and what you're passionate about. So I'm going to ask you to do that here so we can all feel a little bit included. So in order to understand from the human element, we have to take our public health glasses off, and we have to think about the perception of the individual going through the disease, which is what we'll be doing through this listening tour. So I want you to take off your right shoe and pass it to the person next to you and put it on your foot. Yeah? Take off your right shoe, pass it to the person next to you, and put it on your foot. Yeah? Stay with me, bear with me. I know it's uncomfortable. Maybe nobody told you were doing this. Yeah. And while I'm talking, I want you to wear the other person's shoe. I have to do it? Okay, I'll do it too. You have mine? Yes? Yeah? I can take you switch? You can get mine? Yeah? So it is uncomfortable, it feels a little weird. Why am I having to do this? Why do I have to listen to this crazy lady? Yeah? So you might ask yourself, why am I making you do that? Any ideas? Feel how it's like to walk in the other person's shoe. So I want you to sit with that as I talk for a little bit. I promise it won't be more than like 5 to 7 minutes and you can have your shoe back. But the idea is, to understand people's perceptions. How is their life? What is their day-to-day? What is it like for the woman that is working 2 jobs as a single mom, trying to decide what she's going to buy for her children for dinner? It's challenging and it's different, and sometimes she doesn't control what those things are. So that's what we're trying to find out by going through this exercise. So as a human-centered design firm, we listen, we share, we collaborate, and ultimately we try and get to the collective impact. So what are the big questions we're trying to ask, and how do we do that? So I'm going to share with you a little bit of what we did last night, and what I'm going to ask of you throughout the day is probably to speak with you a bit. So we're doing what we call immersion interviews, and they last about 45 minutes to an hour to really unpack what you see day to day and why you see it, and then how you see some of these drivers impacting. That information will collectively go together. I'm going to be in Brazil, India, South Africa, Tanzania, the US over the next 4 to 5 months so we can collectively look around NCDs globally. But being here with you today, I think gives us significant insight into what these challenges and the positive impacts are. So the first thing we asked everyone to do was looked at these innovation impact areas. We're looking at these impact drivers for the next 5 years. So what are the biggest things that are going to impact this, right? So we asked them, is it medical education? Is it an issue of human resources? It is an issue of global economic growth? Could it be fintech? Could it be universal connectivity? Could it be patient centricity? What about chemicals in the drug supply? Could it be pharmaceutical breakthroughs and the supply chain around that? Could it be AI? Blockchain? Sustainable energy? You might think it might be all of them. So what is the top 3? So we had the teams go around and decide what were the top 3 things. And the number one thing that we found last night when we were listening, and the number one thing I've been hearing thus far, is that patient centricity. So at the crux of it, maybe AI goes in it, maybe sustainable energy goes in it, maybe access goes in it, but that patient centricity needs to be at the beginning. And what I really liked that the team said was that it's people centricity, which I think is one of the things is we need to keep in our minds as we are walking in another person's shoes, thinking about their perspective, understanding what they do. So group consensus, patient centricity, essentially. But there were a number of other things. I think, one of the things that I found very interesting was AI and how that could play a role here in Brazil and how those technologies could be used to show empathy, to show adherence, to show different perspectives, as well as we saw a lot of issues around education and some of the challenges, and I know you all well know, but both from the user perspective, the patient perspective, and also the provider perspective. So I'd love to dig into more of that today as we learn together. The other activity we had them do was around barriers. So looking at what are your key risks and barriers to attaining those positive impacts. We gave the caveat of you can't say things like money and you can't say things like policies. We know that those are barriers and we know that those are challenges and we all know that those aren't going to get resolved in any time. The key findings that we, as the groups worked together again, they had to identify barriers themselves as individuals and then come together as a consensus. And then we, of course, shared those things. One of the things that I learned last night was really around the enabling environment. That could be politically, the priorities, those shifting priorities. How do you make sure that your focus on your NCDs stays within the paradigm and that shift of those priorities? And how do you then advocate for that to be included in those priorities? So many other challenges were shared, but another thing around just this collaboration amongst implementers, amongst donors, talking to one another, which takes time, it takes money, and it takes a lot of effort. So things like today and what you all are doing here are very rare, and I would really encourage that to continue, and the ability to come and speak with you all about it is wonderful. So I'll be poking around today, asking lots of questions. You're welcome to grab your shoe back if you'd like, or you can keep it on throughout the day. But again, my name is Cristin. I really would welcome any feedback that you have. And if you're willing to do an interview with me, this week I'll be in São Paulo and next week in Rio, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you.